So here we have Bofuri's hardest boss to date, the HR department. No, but seriously, we do get to see the what is considered to be their most difficult boss to date, and all things considered, it was probably the most balanced in terms of giving a challenge but not making it impossible. But I mean, that HR joke was gold. So Sally finds the brilliant way of getting around her fears, and that is to go into the mouth of Xenomorph Maple. So as she comes out covered in slime, you're thinking, oh man, did I get the wrong Bofuri episode? What's going on here? I think I went on a sketchy site. They, in return, have one of the developers basically say, I never thought something like that would happen. I wonder what it would feel like to be inside the mouth of that creature. And then the other one's just like, that's harassment. And I'm like, the HR joke and the HR department had those red flags, the red bells going off there. And I was like, that is such a quality joke right there. But, I mean, you gotta leave it to Maple and Sally. The unorthodox ways they get about this entire situation is absolutely comedy gold. Now, I do have a full live reaction to today's episode available on my Patreon, so if you want to see that, consider supporting. But yeah, this episode, I honestly feel like the show is just getting better. Honestly, I'd go as far to say episode 1 of season 2 was the weakest out of the 4, and that's not a diss at episode 1 by any means. That's just me really highlighting the quality of season 2 so far. Usually the first couple of episodes are like the biggest episodes for a month or so because they're trying to get you reinvested or invested for the first time into a show. But this one, it honestly feels like it's getting better with each episode. I mean, the animation in this episode was absolutely top tier, and it's not to say like, oh, they just focused on this episode and left the other ones. Like, yeah, even when 3D is noticeable in this show, it still feels like they animate it well, and this show is just like non-stop. It's like watching your favorite Twitch streamer just play a game you either love and you can't play because you don't have the skills, or they play it in such a way that it's entertainment gold because their personalities are fantastic. And honestly, Maple and Sally are my favorite Twitch streamers right now, right? And I love the fact that they actually feel like the game design side of things are actually improving alongside the entire episodes, right? So a big hurdle that they have is a character like Maple immediately from day one broke the mechanics and just was, how do you balance something when people can do what Maple just did? And over the course of the show, it felt like it was impossible. But honestly, even last week, the game developers, they made progress. They actually had a floor boss that pushed Maple to almost her breaking limit. Of course, they got around it because Sally was with her, but it actually did show promise that if you steal her skills, if you mimic her skills, anything like that, that would be a big challenge. Even in this episode, there's like this chameleon that basically it hits you and you get knocked out sort of a thing. For Maple, she doesn't lose any health points because of her ridiculous defense, but we do see she did get knocked out. So they're continuing to find ways to make it a challenge for the average player, but also make it so Maple can't just always ride the floor boss before destroying it with some horrible spikes. So instead of just making it like they have to buff everything to the point that she can never beat it, but then everyone else is left behind, no, the top players, as we see, were able to clear this event pretty easily, and even though maybe they put up a challenge here and there, they got it done. And for your more casual players, they will be sweating buckets. But I like the fact that an episode like this was all about saying, the game development, they're looking at Maple as like their playtester, their beta tester, and they're saying, how can we evolve this? How can we make a floor boss that would actually push them and the pro players to actually work up a sweat? The casual players may never defeat certain bosses like those, but the casual players never complete every event because it does take a more dedicated playtime. And I like the fact that for what they claim to be their hardest boss yet, it did feel like, all things considered, the most challenging. I think it would have been in its best interest to maybe have the floor boss carry into next episode for even a couple of minutes. That would have really let us soak in just, wow, they're actually putting up a fight. But when you consider the fact that they were using a lot of attacks from Machine God to just a numerous blasts that would normally one-shot anything, it felt like not only were they getting pushed in and actually getting damage, but also their one-hit KO moves that they would typically use aren't doing much for this Armored Knight. And it took a lot to even get it down to the point where it actually fell down. Like, by the end, they had to, like, encase it in a couple of barriers and basically launch a nuclear blast, otherwise it just wouldn't have worked out. So I like the fact that they are feeling like the game developers that are not just there for the memes of being like, how, I can't believe she's breaking my game. They still do that, but they also are finding ways and they're reflecting on how she plays game. Like, I didn't expect her to do that, or I didn't expect the object count to get broke because of this unorthodox way of how she plays. They're using her as reference to fix their game and to balance their game, but they're also reflecting on Pain and these other top players to make sure that it's still a challenge for them, but not impossible either. Of course, they're always hoping they end up stumping them to the point that they can't do it, but in general, it feels like there's a good variety of developers there that all have different opinions on how to target Maple and these mechanics, but not to the point that it becomes unplayable. And that's what makes this show so good, is it feels like it's written by someone who actually understands game development and understands what a video game is. It's not just an author who looked at, isekai or trapped in a video game or teleported to a video game stories. Yeah, they just have swords and a menu. No, like this feels like someone who knows what they're doing, and the side of game development that they explore here, it's noticeable if you know anything about game development, but even if you have no interest in that subject, they make it entertaining for the casual viewer, and it's really good to see what they're doing. I truly think after watching 4 episodes, I can safely say I'm enjoying season 2 more than its first season. And its first season, I watched 3 times total. Over, like, the first couple of times was pretty much back to back, but I mean, even on a third watch, I like it. And I typically don't rewatch many shows anymore because there's just so much to watch, but you know what? This one right here, it brings a grin to my face. I have a very fun time. Like I mentioned, the animation is really good. It's honestly creative with its monster design. You have to give credit where credit's due. The number of times we focus in, whether they're in an ice location or they're in space and they're fighting a giant UFO spaceship, what are we looking at here? To just the numerous graveyard designs. Like, it feels like the monster variety to the boss variety to literally anything. It just feels like, wow, like this game would keep you interested. This is like the type of live service game or online game where it's just like the game developers are constantly throwing new ideas, new things. Some will be more of a challenge than others, and in the case of Sally, some you won't want to play to the point that you hide in your friend's mouth. As dirty as that sounds, it actually wasn't too gross, other than the, you know, the sensation of being covered in slime, because we know this is a world where they can eat the food in here and feel like they're eating it. So that is an entire sensation that really highlights her fear that she would prefer that than looking at some skeletons. But you get my point, right? There's variety, there's creativity, and it feels like it's actually thought out both on how it can be entertaining for watching general players traverse this game, but also if you get a kick out of that game development side, they keep that side relevant, and really I'm impressed by how they've continued to balance the game without breaking it to the point that Maple still feels like she's soloing everything without much struggle. There's still that element there, but we have seen over the past couple of episodes a more challenged Maple. Yes, she's goofy when they get away with it with comedy, but it does show you that they are challenging her more. The obvious solution so she doesn't become weak is have her paired up with Sally or any other player, but still, you get my point. I will say though, as much as they probably wanted me to feel bad for Syrup getting blasted into oblivion, when I saw what they did to that poor turtle boss, I couldn't feel too bad for Syrup. I mean, you basically were getting karma on that one, I mean, I gotta admit. But thoughts and feelings yourself on this week's Bofuri episode down below. What did you think? Favorite point if you got any, do let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell to get as many notifications on the channel as possible, and be sure to head on over to the Patreon if you want to see that full live reaction like I mentioned. While you're there, you can also get yourself a video shoutout. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.